Dr. Marina Thorne adjusted her diving mask for the third time, her hands trembling not from the cold Pacific waters, but from anticipation. 3 miles below the surface, her submersible deep echo descended into the Mariana Trench's unexplored western ridge. For 6 months, her hydrophones had been picking up strange acoustic patterns from these depths, sounds that didn't match any known marine life. The bioluminescent displays outside her porthole created an alien landscape of dancing lights. Marina had spent 15 years studying deep-sea creatures, but nothing had prepared her for what she saw at 11,000 feet. Crystalline formations jutted from the ocean floor like an underwater cathedral, pulsing with soft blue light that seemed to respond to her submarine's presence. "This is impossible," she whispered into her recorder. "The formations appear to be living coral, but at this depth, with no sunlight. Her voice trailed off as movement caught her eye. A creature emerged from behind the largest crystal spire unlike anything in her textbooks. It resembled a cross between a manta ray and a jellyfish, its translucent body spanning nearly 20 feet. Delicate tendrils flowed from its edges like liquid silk, and its entire form pulsed with the same ethereal light as the coral formations. But it was the sound that made Marina's breath catch. A low, haunting melody filled the water, not the clicks and calls she knew from whales or dolphins, but something infinitely more complex. Harmonies layered upon harmonies, creating music that seemed to vibrate through her very bones. The creature approached her submersible without fear, its large eyes meeting hers through the porthole. In that moment, Marina felt something she had never experienced in all her years of scientific study, a profound sense of recognition, as if this ancient being knew her. "You've been waiting," she said aloud, though she couldn't explain why those words came to her. The creature's song changed, becoming more urgent, almost pleading. Marina activated her external recording equipment, capturing every note. As she did, more creatures emerged from the coral city, dozens of them, all singing the same complex melody. But as Marina watched in growing amazement and horror, she realized something that chilled her to the core. They were all elderly. Every single creature showed signs of advanced age-faded coloring, slower movements, scarred skin. She was witnessing the final gathering of an ancient species, their last song echoing through the depths of an ocean that had been their home for millions of years. The largest creature, clearly the eldest, approached her window and pressed what appeared to be a hand-like appendage against the glass. Through the water, through the metal and reinforced plastic, Marina felt a jolt of pure emotion loneliness, so profound it brought tears to her eyes, and beneath it, desperate hope. What do you need from me?" she whispered. The answer came not in words, but in images that flooded her mind. She saw the ocean as it once was teeming with these luminous beings, their songs maintaining some kind of balance in the deep currents. She saw their numbers dwindling over centuries as the waters changed, as the songs grew fainter. And she saw herself somehow central to their survival. As her oxygen gauge warned of limited time remaining, Marina made a promise to the ancient eyes watching her. "I'll come back. I'll find a way to help you." The creature's song followed her ascent, growing fainter but never fading completely. Even hours later, back on her research vessel, Marina could still hear their melody in her mind, a haunting reminder that somewhere in the deepest places of the earth, love itself was dying, and she might be the only one who could save it. That night, as she analyzed her recordings, Marina discovered the most disturbing truth of all. The creature's song was actually a mating call, one that had gone unanswered for over a century. Nerian had been alone for 147 years, 4 months, and 16 days. He kept count by the lunar tides that pulled at his ancient heart, each cycle a reminder of his solitude in the crushing depths of the abyss. When the metal vessel descended into his realm, carrying the surface dweller who could somehow hear his people's songs. Nerian felt something he had forgotten existed: hope. For nearly 15 decades, he had been the guardian of the Crystal Gardens, the last male of the Luminar High, watching over the dying remnants of his species with nothing but memories and duty to sustain him. The female elders had chosen him long ago, when there were still dozens of his kind. "You are the strongest," they had said, their bioluminescent bodies pulsing with ancient wisdom. "You must survive to sing our songs to the one who will come." At the time, Nerian had thought their prophecy was mere wishful thinking. Now, watching the strange craft disappear toward the surface, he wondered if the seers had been right all along. His massive form glided through the coral cathedral his ancestors had cultivated over millennia. Each crystal formation held the genetic memory of his people, their history, their knowledge, their very essence encoded in living stone. The remaining 37 females tended these memory gardens with the dedication of the dying, preserving what they could before their species vanished forever. "She heard us, didn't she?" Corallia's voice reached him through the water, her ancient form barely luminescent now. At 400 years old, she was the eldest among them, keeper of the deepest songs. "Yes," Nerian replied, his own voice carrying harmonics that could travel for miles through the ocean depths. "She heard us, and more she understood." The other females gathered around him, their movements slow but purposeful. Each had lived long enough to see the gradual poisoning of their waters, the warming that had driven away their food sources, the acidification that had killed so many of their kind. They had watched helplessly as their mates died one by one, leaving only Nerian to carry the male genetic line. "The surface dwellers' songs are strange," observed Thalassa, her scarred hide telling the story of too many empty decades. "They have no harmony with the currents, no rhythm with the tides." Nerian remembered the chaos of sound that had emanated from the metal vessel mechanical noises, electromagnetic interference, the rapid heartbeat of the human inside. Yet beneath it all, he had sensed something pure, genuine compassion, and a willingness to help that transcended species. "Her people live differently than we do," he explained, settling onto the coral bed where he had spent so many lonely years. "They exist above the water, in the realm of air and light. But this one, Marina, she has chosen to descend into our darkness." Over the following weeks, Nerian found himself changing. The crushing weight of solitude that had defined his existence began to lift. He sang not just the mourning songs of his dying people, but older melodies, courtship songs he had not dared voice in over a century. The females noticed, their own bioluminescence brightening in response. "You grow younger, Nerian," Corallia observed during one of their evening gatherings. "Your light grows stronger." It was true. For the first time in decades, Nerian felt the stirring of possibilities beyond mere survival. The human had awakened something in him, not romantic love, for such feelings could only exist between his own kind, but a deeper connection to hope itself. When Marina's vessel returned 3 weeks later, Nerian was waiting. This time, she brought different equipment devices that translated sound into light patterns, machines that could record not just their songs, but the emotional frequencies embedded within them. Through painstaking trial and error, they began to communicate. Marina showed him images of the surface world, of the countless humans who lived unknowing above his realm. In return, Nerian shared the history of his people through song there. Roll as shepherds of the deep currents, their symbiotic relationship with the ocean's hidden ecosystems, their desperate need for genetic diversity to survive. But it was when Marina played recordings of whale songs, dolphin calls, and the voices of other marine mammals that Nerian understood the true scope of what they faced. His people were not the only ones singing songs of loss. The entire ocean was calling out in loneliness, its creatures struggling to find each other across increasingly hostile waters. As Marina prepared to leave that day, Nerian made a decision it would have seemed impossible just months before. He began to sing not just the songs of his own people, but a new melody, one that bridged the gap between species, between the deep and the surface, between despair and possibility. The song followed Marina to the surface, carrying with it the weight of centuries and the fragile promise of tomorrow. Professor Delphine Coral had been studying the ocean's secrets for 63 years, but she had never seen data quite like what Dr. Marina Thorne spread across her cluttered laboratory table. The acoustic recordings defied every principle of marine biology she had spent her lifetime defending. These frequency patterns, Delphine murmured, adjusting her thick glasses as she studied the spectrographs. They're not just communication. They're architectural. Marina leaned forward eagerly. At 28, she was less than half Delphine's age, but the older woman recognized the fire of discovery burning in her eyes, the same passion that had driven Delphine to dive deeper and stay longer than any of her contemporaries. What do you mean, architectural? Delphine's weathered fingers traced the wave patterns on the printouts. Her laboratory, housed in a converted lighthouse on the Oregon coast, was filled with decades of research charts mapping ocean currents. From the 1960s, temperature readings that documented the planet's changing climate and acoustic records of marine life spanning 3 generations of study. In 1962, I recorded similar patterns off the coast of New Zealand, Delphine said, pulling out a yellowed folder from her filing cabinet. I was just a graduate student then, working on my thesis about deep-sea acoustic phenomena. My advisor dismissed these recordings as equipment malfunction. She spread the old charts alongside Marina's fresh data. The similarity was undeniable, the same complex harmonic structures, the same mathematical precision underlying what seemed like organic communication. But look at this, Delphine continued, overlaying the 2 sets of data. The 1962 recordings show 12 distinct voice patterns. Your recordings show only 37. Whatever species you've found, Professor Thorne, they're dying out. Marina felt a chill run down her spine. Nerian, that's what I call the male he's been alone for. Nearly 150 years. The females are all ancient. They're the last of their kind. Delphine walked to her window, gazing out at the Pacific Ocean that had been her life's work. In my 6 decades of study, I've watched species after species disappear from these waters. The great whites that used to migrate past this lighthouse every spring gone. The blue whale populations that once numbered in the hundreds of thousands decimated. But this ... she turned back to Marina. This is different. Your Luminar High aren't just another endangered species. They're keystone maintainers. Keystone maintainers? Think of the ocean as a vast symphony, Delphine explained, her voice taking on the patient tone of a teacher. Every species plays its part, but some the keystone species conduct entire sections. Your deep-sea dwellers, they've been conducting the abyssal currents for millions of years. Their songs don't just communicate, they regulate. Delphine pulled out a series of ocean current maps spanning the past century. Look at these patterns. See how the deep currents have become increasingly erratic over the past 150 years? Right around the time your Nerian lost his last male companion. The timing isn't coincidental. Marina studied the maps with growing alarm. The disruption in deep-sea currents corresponded with changes in global weather patterns, the collapse of fish populations, and the acceleration of ocean acidification. Are you saying that losing the Luminar High caused all this? Not caused, Delphine corrected. But without their regulatory influence, the ocean's ability to heal itself has been severely compromised. They're like IMUN cells for the planet's circulatory system. Over the following hours, Delphine shared decades of observations that had puzzled her throughout her career. Unexplained changes in water temperature at specific depths. Acoustic anomalies that seemed to predict shifts in marine ecosystems. bioluminescent blooms that appeared to follow patterns too complex to be random. I've been documenting the symptoms. Delphine realized aloud. You found the cause. But as they delved deeper into the research, a troubling picture emerged. The Luminar High weren't just endangered, they were biologically locked into extinction. Their reproductive cycle required specific chemical conditions that no longer existed in the increasingly acidic oceans. Even if Marina could somehow bring genetic material from the deep-sea population to create offspring, the young couldn't survive in the current ocean environment. It's a catch-22, Delphine said grimly. They need their songs to regulate the ocean chemistry, but they need regulated ocean chemistry to reproduce. Marina slumped in her chair. So we're too late. Even if we wanted to help them, we can't. Not necessarily. Delphine's eyes had taken on a calculating gleam. There's something I haven't told you about my 1962 recordings. I didn't just document. The songs, I recorded them interacting with human-made sounds. Sonar, specifically. The creatures seemed to adapt their frequencies to work with our technology. She pulled out her oldest recording equipment, devices that looked primitive compared to Marina's modern instruments. What if the solution isn't just preserving their natural reproductive cycle? What if it's helping them evolve beyond it? Marina felt the stirring of impossible hope. You're talking about technological intervention, artificial enhancement of their natural abilities. I'm talking about partnership, Delphine corrected. Your Nerean reached out to you for a reason. Maybe their ancient prophecies saw this moment coming, the point where their species could only survive by joining their songs with ours. As night fell over the Lighthouse Laboratory, 2 generations of marine scientists worked side by side, piecing together a plan that seemed equal parts brilliant and insane. They would attempt something no one had ever tried, creating a hybrid communication system that combined the Luminar High's natural regulatory abilities with human technology's amplification power. But they both knew that even if their theories were correct, they would need help from someone with resources, connections, and the willingness to risk everything on the survival of a species most people would never believe existed. Captain Reef Nautilus stood on the deck of his mining vessel Deep Prophet, watching his crew prepare the extraction equipment that would strip the ocean floor bare. For 15 years, he had built an empire harvesting rare minerals from the deepest trenches, becoming one of the wealthiest deep-sea mining executives in the Pacific. The irony of his name, chosen long before his environmental awakening, was not lost on him. The call from Dr. Marina Thorne had come at the worst possible time. His company, Abyssal Extraction Industries, was days away from beginning the largest deep-sea mining operation in history. Trillions of dollars in rare earth elements waited beneath the Mariana Trench, and investors from 3 continents were expecting results. Sir, we're receiving some kind of interference on the sonar, his chief engineer, Rodriguez, reported. It's coming from the same coordinates Dr. Thorne mentioned. Reef had initially dismissed Marina's request for a meeting as another environmental activist trying to shut down his operation. But something in her voice, a desperate urgency that reminded him of his own daughter pleading for a bedtime story, had made him agree to hear her out. When Marina's research vessel pulled alongside the Deep Prophet, Reef was struck by the contrast. Her small, battered boat looked insignificant next to his massive industrial platform, yet she climbed aboard with the confidence of someone who believed she could move mountains. Captain Nautilus, thank you for seeing me, Marina said, shaking his hand with surprising strength. I know you're busy, but what I'm about to show you will change everything you think you know about these waters. Reef had heard similar claims from dozens of scientists over the years. They all wanted him to stop mining, to consider the environmental impact, to think about future generations. He had learned to nod politely while calculating profit margins in his head. But when Marina played the recordings from the deep, something happened that Reef wasn't prepared for. The haunting melodies filled his ship's conference room, and for the first time in 20 years, Captain Reef Nautilus remembered why he had fallen in love with the ocean in the first place. He had been 7 years old, swimming in the shallow waters off his grandmother's island home, when he first heard whales singing in the distance. The sound had filled him with wonder, a sense that the ocean held mysteries beyond human imagination. That little boy had dreamed of becoming an ocean explorer, of discovering new species and protecting marine life. Somewhere along the way, that dream had been buried under business plans and profit projections. These creatures, Marina explained, showing him Professor Delphine's research, they're not just endangered. They're essential to the ocean's health. And your mining operation will destroy the last place they can survive. Reef studied the data with the same analytical mind that had made him successful in business. The evidence was compelling, but the implications were staggering. You're asking me to shut down a multi-billion-dollar operation based on the songs of creatures most people would consider fictional. I'm asking you to help us save them, Marina replied. Your company has the resources, the technology, and the deep-sea capabilities we need. Professor Delphine believes we can create a hybrid system that amplifies their natural abilities, but we need your mining equipment to build the infrastructure. Reef walked to his office window, looking out at the ocean that had made him wealthy. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from investors, government officials, and board members. The pressure to proceed with the mining operation was enormous. Do you have children, Dr. Thorne? No, but I have a daughter, Emma. She's 12 years old, and she loves marine biology. Every time I come home from a mining expedition, she asks me what new creatures I've discovered down there. Reef's voice grew quiet. I always have to tell her that I destroy more than I discover. Over the next 3 days, Reef found himself torn between two worlds. His business partners threatened lawsuits if he delayed the mining operation. Environmental groups he had fought for years suddenly reached out, offering support if he would abandon deep-sea extraction entirely. The media caught wind of the story, and his company's stock price began to fluctuate wildly. But it was a conversation with his daughter that ultimately made the decision for him. Daddy, are you really going to help save the singing fish? Emma asked during their nightly video call. They're not exactly fish, sweetheart. They're unlike anything we've ever seen before. But you're going to help them, right? Because if they're the last ones, someone has to. That night, Reef made the call that would cost him his fortune and possibly his career. He contacted his board of directors and announced that Abyssal Extraction Industries was pivoting from mining to marine conservation. The reaction was explosive. Half his board resigned. Investors pulled funding. His stock price crashed. But Reef felt lighter than he had in years working with Marina and Professor Delphine. Reef began converting his mining equipment into conservation tools. The massive underwater excavators became precision instruments for building artificial coral reefs. The mineral extraction chambers were repurposed as underwater laboratories. The sonar arrays designed to map mineral deposits were recalibrated to amplify and broadcast the luminar high songs across the ocean. This is either the most brilliant conservation effort in history, Reef told his remaining crew, or the most expensive mistake I've ever made. Rodriguez, who had been with Reef since the beginning, clapped him on the shoulder. Sir, I've been watching you get rich for 15 years, but I've never seen you this happy. As the Deep Prophet began its transformation from destroyer to protector, Reef realized that some tides were worth turning, even when they swept away everything you thought you wanted. The real test would come when they attempted to implement Professor Delphine's hybrid communication system. If it worked, they might save not just the lunar high, but the ocean itself. If it failed, Reef would have sacrificed his empire for nothing. But as he listened to Nereian songs echoing through his ship's modified speakers, Captain Reef Nautilus knew he had finally become the man his 7-year-old self had dreamed of being. Luna Pelagic had never expected her marine conservation internship to lead her 3 miles beneath the ocean's surface, surrounded by creatures that shouldn't exist and technology that seemed like science fiction. At 22, she was the youngest member of the team attempting the most ambitious interspecies collaboration in human history. The converted deep-sea platform New Harmony floated above the Luminar High's crystal gardens, its modified equipment humming with a purpose Luna's environmental science professors had never imagined. For 3 months, she had worked alongside Dr. Marina Thorne, Professor Delphine Coral, and Captain Reef Nautilus, learning to translate between human technology and ancient songs that predated civilization. Luna, we're ready for the first synchronized broadcast, Marina called from the control room. Are you getting clear responses from the colony? Luna adjusted her headset and checked the bioacoustic monitors. Through the platform's underwater viewing chamber, she could see Nerian's massive form gliding among the crystal formations, his bioluminescent body pulsing in complex patterns that she had learned to read like musical notation. Nerian is positioning the females around the amplification nodes, Luna reported. Professor Delphine, the harmonic resonance is building exactly as your models predicted. Over the past months, Luna had become the primary communicator between the human team and the Luminar High. Her generation, raised with digital technology and environmental consciousness, seemed naturally adapted to bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and modern innovation. The hybrid system they had built was unprecedented. Captain Reef's repurposed mining equipment provided the power and precision needed to amplify the Luminar High songs across vast distances. Professor Delphine's decades of research had revealed the exact frequencies needed to restore the ocean's natural regulatory patterns. And Dr. Marina's discoveries had made first contact possible. But it was Luna who had figured out how to make it all work together. The key was realizing that their songs aren't just communication, Luna had explained during one of their planning sessions. They're programming, like coding, but for living systems. We're not just amplifying their voices, we're helping them upload their software to the ocean's hardware. Now, as the moment of truth approached, Luna felt the weight of 2 species' future resting on her shoulders. If the synchronized broadcast failed, the Luminar High would continue their slow decline toward extinction, and the ocean's regulatory systems would remain broken. Beginning transmission in 10 seconds, Marina announced. Luna watched Nerian rise toward the platform, his ancient eyes meeting hers through the reinforced viewing portal. In those depths, she saw centuries of loneliness, hope, and trust that humbled her. The other Luminar High arranged themselves in precise patterns around the crystal gardens, their combined bioluminescence creating a light show that would have left ancient mariners speechless. Transmission active, Professor Delphine confirmed. All systems are amplifying their natural frequencies. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The Luminar High songs, enhanced by human technology, began to spread through the oceans. Depths like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. But these weren't just acoustic waves. They were instructions, commands embedded in sound that told the water itself how to behave. Luna monitored the readings as the songs reached there. First target, a massive underwater current system that had been stagnant for decades. The water began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing strength and purpose. We're seeing current restoration at a depth of 8,000 feet, Captain Reef reported from his navigation station. The flow patterns are matching Professor Delphine's historical data. But the real miracle was happening among the Luminar High themselves. As their amplified songs spread through the ocean, something extraordinary occurred. The chemical composition of the water around the crystal gardens began to change, returning to the conditions necessary for their reproduction. Luna, Marina's voice was filled with wonder. Look at the bioluminescence patterns. Are they? Luna's breath caught. They're singing mating songs. Real mating songs, not just the morning calls we've been hearing. For the first time in over a century, the Luminar High were singing not of loss, but of possibility. Over the following weeks, the effects rippled outward. Fish populations that had been declining for decades began to stabilize. Coral reefs showed signs of recovery. The ocean's pH levels started to normalize in areas where the Luminar High songs reached. But the most profound change was in Nerian himself. The ancient guardian, who had spent 147 years in solitude, began to transform. His songs grew stronger, more complex, filled with harmonies that spoke of hope rather than despair. The elders are changing too, Luna observed during one of her daily communication sessions. They're not just maintaining the crystal gardens anymore, they're expanding them. 3 months after the first successful broadcast, Luna received the news she had been hoping and praying for. Deep beneath the ocean's surface, in waters that sang with renewed life, the Luminar High had achieved something that hadn't happened in nearly 2 centuries. New life. The first Luminar High offspring in 147 years emerged from the crystal nurseries, their small forms glowing with the same ethereal light as their elders, but somehow brighter, more vibrant. They were born into an ocean that sang with the combined voices of 2 species working in harmony. Luna stood on the deck of the new harmony, watching the sunset paint the Pacific in shades of gold and crimson. Her phone buzzed with messages from marine biologists around the world, reporting similar successes with other endangered deep-sea species. The Luminar High songs were awakening life throughout the ocean's depths. "You did it, Luna," Marina said, joining her at the rail. "You found a way to save them." "We all did," Luna replied, thinking of the unlikely team that had come together to prevent an extinction. But really, they saved themselves. We just helped them remember how to sing. As if in response to her words, a haunting melody rose from the depths, not the lonely songs of loss they had first heard, but something new. A symphony of ancient voices joined by human harmony, singing the ocean back to life. Luna smiled, knowing that somewhere far below, Nerian was no longer alone, and his kind would continue their vital work for generations to come. The last echo of the whispering tide had become the first note of a new ocean song, one that would play for centuries, keeping the deep waters alive and the planet in balance. In the distance, a pod of whales answered the Luminar High's call, their voices adding to the growing chorus that connected all ocean life. The sea was singing again, and Luna Pelagic had helped write the lyrics to its song of rebirth.